Oh, if you have been feeling a little low lately, not really knowing what this is all for, why we're doing what we're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, if it all feels so monotonous and purposeless, then this is the episode for you. Pop in your headphones, go for a walk, take a break from all the emails. They'll still be there when you get back. And join me as we settle into this episode. You won't regret it. Hello, and welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy, and today is going to be a really special day. The impact that you are having on other people is so much greater than you know. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. I don't care how good or bad you feel on a daily basis. The impact you have on the world around you is so much greater than you realize. I had a really magical experience this past weekend that interestingly has been building for 15 years. For 15 years, my husband and I didn't realize the incredible impact that he had on a patient 15 years ago. We had an idea, but to the extent of which we had no idea. And this weekend, we realized it. So let me take you back. 15 years ago, my husband, who many of you know, Killian, is an oral surgeon. And 15 years ago, in his every other day, it must have been a Tuesday, it's just another day at work. He had a consultation with a new patient, this young girl who at the time was graduating from high school. And she traveled from far to come and see him. It was her second or third opinion. She had a cleft lip and palate. And what transpired over that appointment was not unlike any other appointment during the day. She had a certain treatment plan that was already in place. My husband gave her his opinion. In fact, it was a little bit of not such a great conversation because she was about to head off to college. And Killian said, we are not ready for the surgical procedure you thought you were ready for. So I'm actually going to recommend you go back into orthodontics, you redo the work that's been done here, and we're not even going to be able to do any kind of surgical correction for quite a few months, maybe even a year. So I want you just in the moment to imagine this happening in your practice, whether you're a practitioner, a doctor, or a dentist, and you have a patient in your chair that you have to deliver some really uncomfortable news for. You know what the right thing to do is. And this is a young, impressionable girl who, as we all know, that age, our emotions are all over the place. She's about to embark on the next adventure of her life, and she just wants to have the surgery and have it done. And now this very unpopular opinion is being thrust at her from yet another surgeon who probably each one had a different opinion. Killian went on to work with that beautiful young lady. And over time, she went back into braces. They worked together with a team, which so many of you realize we are nothing without a team. So she had an oral surgeon and a prosthodontist. And Killian did an enormous surgery for her, which involved, cheek implants and closing the defect in her palate and in the alveolus. She had her midline shifted with braces. She had implants, all the most that one possibly could have in that situation, right? In that situation, she really needed so much support from multiple people. And when she finished, she looked beautiful. She looked like a different person. Absolutely. She was gorgeous. And what's so interesting is at the time, I remember she wrote this beautiful thank you note to him. saying how much it meant to her. And in the note, she said, I never thought that I was beautiful. I was never one to think or dream of a marriage or a wedding and a beautiful white dress. I never thought anyone would love me. And you've made me feel beautiful. And now I can start imagining that that might be possible for me one day. This young lady went on to actually she went into medicine herself and started working with other patients who have cleft lip and palate. And over the years, every now and then we'd receive a picture of her in a remote country with a patient who she was assisting the surgery on. So proud to be supporting them in their transformation and in their healing and sharing that with Killian. And this past weekend, this beautiful young lady got married. And she invited us to the wedding. We didn't know anybody else there. There was just her family. We don't know anybody in her family. And we flew to South Carolina to attend her wedding. When we got to the rehearsal dinner, she saw Killian, probably for the first time in 15 years, and almost jumped into his arms. She left all of her friends, all of her family, to spend a good 25 minutes with us, just pouring into Killian and telling him what a difference he had made in her life, how the trajectory of her life changed on that day when she had that consultation with him, before he even did the surgery, how the trajectory of her life changed when someone cared enough to give her the hard truth and to share with her their expertise and opinion, despite the circumstances, despite the discomfort it caused, despite the tears that followed, but to care enough about her to do the right thing and then to support her through it. It was so beautiful. She mentioned Mitch Albom's book, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. And for those of you who haven't read that book, it is about the 5 people in your life that most significantly change and pivot your journey through life, that have the greatest impact on you. And she said, I don't know who the other 4 people are, but I know you were one of those 5. And actually on the next day at her wedding, guys, I'm like getting emotional just remembering that this weekend. At her wedding the next day, she took time away from her wedding. I mean, we all know, those of us who've been married and in weddings, how you have so little time with each person and you really don't even remember the night because you're rushing from table to table hosting this beautiful event. She took time and went and got a gift that she had held for Killian and brought it out to him at her wedding, at her reception, and it was this book. When I tell you the impact that it had on my husband and on me, I don't think words can describe what that meant to us, what that meant to him. The recognition of the impact we can have and do have on a daily basis on our patients, on our team members, on our colleagues, on our families, we take for granted. And it's moments like these when we realize that an everyday interaction that in Killian's mind just went by another day. I don't think that evening he even mentioned to me on that day she had a consultation with him. I don't think it was significant enough for him to even remember to relay the story to me. And yet, that was the moment and the day that changed the trajectory of this young lady's life. I mean, she even went on to say that she would not have met her husband. She would not be in the career she's in if it wasn't for that interaction in his office on a regular old Tuesday. We take for granted the impact we have on people's lives. We get so wrapped up in our own frustrations and anxieties. We get so wrapped up in the small minutia and what we consider our problems, and I'm using air quotes there, our problems. They feel so big and looming. We tell ourselves that we're not good enough. constantly feeling the sense of imposter syndrome, that if somebody knew what I was really like, then they would be shocked. If anyone found out, this would all fall apart. And those demons and those voices in our heads keep us stuck in an illusion and separate from the miracle of connection, the miracle of interaction, the miracle of impact and influence on one another. We lose sight of that power, of the light that we have to share with others. We don't even recognize it. I know in medicine and dentistry, our days are so busy. We go from one patient to the next. We chat with our team members for split seconds at a time, and we don't realize how those moments, even the briefest of moments, can have enormous impact on another person's life. For a moment, I'd love for you to just reflect on a person in your life who had that kind of impact. A person in your life who, in a very casual or maybe formal interaction, changed the pattern and the choices that you made for the rest of your life. I'm sure right away you can come up with 2 or 3 of them, remembering an interaction that changed your mindset or your perspective, that changed the choices that you made, the decisions that you made, and led you down a whole different trajectory in your life. Introduced you to people that you would never have considered. Because the other miracle of this story is the courage of this young lady to share this gift with Killian. There are 2 parts of this beautiful story. There's the impact that he had on that day, and then there's this beautiful sharing and transparency and vulnerability and authenticity of this young woman to let him know about the impact he had on her. It takes a uniquely magical combination of people to give and receive and give and receive. Because in this, both people won. Both people were changed forever. This weekend changed the trajectory of my husband's life. It impacted him in such a deep, enormous way. It gave him a moment to reflect on the impact that he has had on so many people in deep, deep ways. It changed me, giving me a moment to reflect on the power that we have as human beings in this interaction. That recent Harvard study on happiness that has been running for decades says that the one consistent component of happiness that they found over generations, so multiple age groups, over multiple socioeconomic statuses, over different genders, over different sexual orientations, the one component to happiness that seems to be consistent is relationships. And, I think at first we think of relationships like your group of friends or your immediate family. But really, the relationships that make enormous impact in our lives might be even more important in terms of our happiness. This was a young lady that Killian saw a handful of times, maybe 5 or 6 times in his whole life. Short, brief periods of time. And yet, this relationship has changed the color and the texture of both of their lives in such a deep way. How would your everyday interactions change? How would your everyday interactions feel differently if you were aware of the impact, both empoweringly so and disempoweringly so? Because let's face it, there are many times that we can have a very uncomfortable impact on somebody. All we need to do is look at bullying in schools and we see how that bullying can change the trajectory of a young girl's life, a young boy's life, simply by the interactions they have with people who don't realize the impact they're having on them. So how would your interactions change? How would your words change if you were aware of the potential influence that you have over every patient, every client, every team member, every colleague? How much more present would you be knowing that this moment, this conversation might be the one that changes everything for that person? As you go through your day, I want to gift you this beautiful story because it impacted me in a deep way. It made me have perspective of deeper awareness of those moments that we have. You know, that conversation that you have with somebody in a group setting, maybe it's a casual social interaction, and in the conversation, maybe you're looking over her shoulder to see who else is in the room or who the next person is that you're going to chat to or where your significant other is. Just that one moment. How would that look different? How might you just be more present to that person, recognizing that this conversation might be the one turning point in your life? And I think many times we're not even aware of it in the moment. But as I had asked you earlier to reflect on those people who have changed your life significantly, how many of them are even aware? And I'd love you to consider letting them know how much they impacted your life. Because it is that give and take, that sharing of the story, that giving and then receiving that is so necessary in this heightened awareness and in these deep emotions that really, guys, make everything worthwhile. Doesn't that just make everything worthwhile? Doesn't that put everything in perspective when we start worrying about, oh, I didn't get back to that person, or that email is late, or this bill is overdue, or my kid, isn't getting an A on her report card. All those worries start to just melt away when we realize, wow, whole lives are changed. Whole lives are changed. And, I think in medicine and dentistry, we have a unique opportunity to have deep, deep impact in physical healing and change of our patients' lives. And we forget that. We go about our days thinking it's just another day. And we lose sight of that beautiful power that we have. And even as patients ourselves, or as friends receiving that support from others, we lose sight of the impact we have when we say thank you and we recognize that incredible gift that was given to us. So, who can you reach out to this week? Who can you just let know the impact that they had on you? And maybe pick up Mitch Albom's book and read about his perspective on the 5 people we meet in heaven. And ask yourself, what interactions, what moments, sweet moments, have greater impact than I'm even realizing, that I'm even acknowledging? And how can I allow myself to be more present in them? I also want to invite you, because this has made such a big impact in my life. I want us to think about, as we go into 2024, being more intentional in our actions and our choices and our words, being more intentional for ourselves, because we all know when you feel good, you can do good, right? Killian needed to be in a certain place in that moment when he was interacting with that patient of confidence and presence and calm, all of those empowered emotions, right? If he was feeling stressed and looking at his watch and waiting for the next patient and not being present in the moment, that interaction would have gone very differently, right? So as we go into 2024, how can we harness this power of deep intention, not just in our interactions, but in our choices, in where we put our focus and attention and our time, instead of just being reactive to our environment. How many of us spend our days just reactive to whatever email came up that day, or whatever crisis came up that day, or even whatever patients came into our office that day? So how can we live a life of deeper intention? And so I want to invite you to a workshop that this conversation this weekend has inspired for me, called Reflect and Renew. Reflect and Renew. What we're going to be doing in this workshop on December 29th is looking over the past year with reflection. And in this process, you'll be receiving a workbook, and we'll be working on this together. So on Friday, December 29th, I welcome you to Reflect and Renew. Go to my website, www.thebizofhappiness.com, and you'll see a link to sign up for the workshop. And how do we create intention in 2024? Deeper intention for recognition of those special, important moments that matter most to us, that are aligned with our values, what matters in our lives, that are aligned to our purpose and our why. Don't worry, I've got you. I'll walk you through the process and support you in approaching 2024 in a whole new way. I'd love you to join me. And until then, let's agree. Let's do this together. Let's agree to just be a little bit more aware in our interactions, and give yourself enormous compassion and love, recognizing that the impact you have on others is so much greater than you give yourself credit for, is so much greater than we're even aware of. And we can simply become more aware, remembering always that when you feel good, that's when you can do good. Bye-bye.